the final New Year's Day, but it's actually New Year's week because it's the sixth of the year review. This time we're covering the greatest film quadrilogy. Is that the word? Quadrilogy? Quadology? I don't know. Of all time. Shrek. 4-movie collection. DreamWorks Face. DreamWorks Face. DreamWorks Face. DreamWorks Face. Shrek. I watched all 4 of these films on New Year's Eve. That was my New Year's Eve party. I had some friends over and we watched all 4 Shrek films in marathon. And I must say, watching them in marathon really allows you to catch some of the thematic elements that you might miss if you were just casually viewing Shrek. There's a surprising amount of interesting continuity. Did you know that Hallelujah, the song Hallelujah, that plays not once, not twice, but 3 times. 3 times in the entire Shrek franchise. It plays in the first one, it plays in the last one, and I think it's either the second or third one has it. I think it's the second one. Because the second one is good. All good Shrek movies have Hallelujah. Hallelujah, it's a Shrek review. Hallelujah, hallelujah. So this is the anniversary edition. I don't know what anniversary. Maybe the 10th or the 15th. I don't know. The first movie came out in 2000. First movie, 2001. Second movie, 2004. Third movie, 2007. Fourth movie, 2010. They're all 93 minutes, except the first one, which is 90 minutes. That's, weirdly consistent. So we'll talk about them in order, and then I'll talk about them as a whole. About the franchise, the Shrek universe as a whole. I will not be covering the Puss in Boots spin-off movie today. I feel like that's barely in the Shrek universe. I will not be covering Shrek the Halls either, or any other side Shrektastic projects. Only the 4 core films. Number 1, Shrek 1. Relive every moment of Shrek's, Mike Myers' daring quest to rescue feisty Princess Fiona, Cameron Diaz, with the help of his lovable loudmouth donkey, Eddie Murphy, and win back the deed to his beloved swamp from scheming Lord Farquaad, John Lithgow. That's the summary on the back of this box. So my thoughts on Shrek 1 are interesting, in that I don't think I like it as much as most people do. When I was a kid, I enjoyed the 4th one. I just didn't watch it that much because at that point I was already 11. I don't know. I was a little old to be binging Shrek films constantly. I was watching other things. Shrek, but the first 3 that were out for all of my childhood, I mainly just watched the second and the third one over and over again. I really didn't watch Shrek the First, we're going to call it. Shrek 1, all that much. It just didn't it wasn't memorable to me. Granted, Shrek the Third's not great, but we'll go into, there are parts of Shrek the Third, at least, that, I really enjoyed when I was younger. And I don't really hate that movie, it just has some boring parts. But Shrek 1 was always just kind of it's kind of boring. And after rewatching all of the Shrek films, my opinion on that still kind of stands. I wouldn't say the first one's bad, and I think the novelty of it is what makes it interesting. It's your introduction to the Shrek universe. It's the idea of spinning the Disney fairy tales on its head. But personally, I don't think the first movie offers that much to spin the Disney for. It's mostly just fuck you Disney and twisting fairy tales with pop culture references. There's not a lot to it. It doesn't do a lot to build the Shrek world. Most of the things it establishes in universe don't come back. When do we ever see Duloc again? Never. We never see Duloc again. What even is Duloc? Apparently Farquaad's not a king until he marries the princess. So what is Duloc? Is Duloc a realm of a larger kingdom? I don't know. We never see it. Is Duloc even in the same... Is Duloc part of the Far, Far Away universe? Who knows? It's not... There's not a lot of world building established. It's mainly introducing the character of Shrek, introducing the character of Donkey, and then introducing the character of Fiona. I'm not going to pick up the box again. And I just, like, as a subversion of typical fairy tale love stories, it's really good at what it does. But there's not a lot for me to go back to, personally. It's kind of like, with the hindsight of the other 3 Shrek films in mind, Shrek 1 is kind of a standard fairy tale love story. And part of it is that every DreamWorks movie afterward copied it. So it's like, the character of Shrek, when the movie came out, was unique in that he was kind of like, I guess, edgy for a kid's movie. I don't know, there's probably a better word you could use, but like, you know, he's not like the typical cartoon protagonist of the time. But then after Shrek came out, you know, there's tons of other protagonists like that now. So Shrek, the first Shrek doesn't hold all that much originality value anymore. But it still is like, has some good... Farquaad's a fun villain. I love the scene where he's interrogating the gingerbread man. And he's like, "Do you know the Muffin Man?" And he's like, "No, please help me!" I love I'm a Gingy and Pinocchio stan. I love the stupid side characters. Fiona is cool. I forgot that she's like... They set up her being, like, badass and able to fight in the first movie, which is cool because it kind of comes into play later. But this movie, I mean, we don't even have Puss in Boots yet. Like, this is the prototype Shrek. Shrek 2 is where the world expands to become the full picture. Shrek 1 is not bad. It's not a bad movie, but and there's a lot of, like, great lines. When the ogres, onions, layers line came on, I made everybody in the room shut up and listen to it. Because seeing the dynamic and the bond between Shrek and Donkey grow is fun. But it really, like, in the context of the larger movie series, it really works best. It's really more just an introduction to the characters more than anything. It even goes for the standard, like... main character mishears other characters say something negative and thinks it's about them. That, like, goes for that trope. Like, the plot is just, like, outside of the subversion of, you know, having the main character be this ugly ogre, there's really not all that much original going on in the movie. Like, it's a pretty standard love story. The only thing that's really different is the ogre spin, and then, of course, Fiona becoming the ogre, the thing she thought was the curse when she marries Shrek, which is a cool moment. I think it's a powerful moment. But other than that, I don't know. There's just not much for me to go to. The humor's not as strong. There's not as much world building. I know it sounds odd to talk about the world building in Shrek, but... I mean, well, let's just look at Shrek 2. We're going to jump to Shrek 2, which I guess is represented by Donkey on the box. Shrek 2. With the help of his faithful steed, Donkey, Shrek takes on a potion-brewing fairy godmother, the pompous Prince Charming, and the famed ogre killer, Puss in Boots, a ferocious feline foe who's really just a pussycat at heart. And this one on the back of the box has Gingy, the best Shrek character, objectively. It's a fact. Shrek 2 is easily the greatest movie in the franchise. Easily. It's not even really a contest for me. Shrek 2 is just like the perfect... Okay, so we have all these Disney movies that came out years before where everything ends happily ever after. And Shrek 1 ends like that. Happily ever after. Shrek and Fiona are married. Everything's great. But what happens after the happily ever after? I feel like Shrek 2 is the first fairy tale film to really ask that question. The first notable one, anyway. To ask that question and explore it well. And the way they do that is by introducing... Well, they introduce a ton of world stuff that ends up being important for the rest of the movies to come. Like, I'd argue Shrek 2 is where the Shrek-verse fully takes shape. Out with Duloc, in with Far, Far Away, which is a nice, like, fairy tale version of Hollywood, where all the fairy tale characters live. Shrek and Fiona show up, and, you know, their parents Fiona's parents are like, what? This is not the prince who was supposed to rescue her. And this, I think I'm gonna spend more time talking about, I'm easily gonna spend more time talking about Shrek 2 than any of these other movies, because Shrek 2 is just so good. It starts out with the honeymoon sequence, which is fun, and then you have Shrek trying to get Donkey out of his house, and Donkey's being annoying, and then you have the scene where the trumpet guys come up, and one of them does a trumpet solo, and they're like, you're summoned to meet with Fiona's father, and then they have an argument about that, but then they end up going anyway. And then there's the great scene, which actually goes on for quite a while, but every bit of it is funny, where Donkey's like, oh, there it, and then Shrek's like, would you just shut up for 5 minutes? And then Donkey starts going, I'm not going to keep doing that because that hurts, because I had a tooth fixed earlier today, so that kind of hurts. But he, like, keeps doing... One of my friends just started doing it right after Donkey every time. And it goes on for, like, just long enough to be annoying. Like, to be super annoying for the characters, but not long enough to be, like, annoying and grating for the audience. Like, the joke lasts exactly as long as it should. That scene's great. Then they go to Far, Far Away, and the scene where Shrek and Fiona get out of the carriage and they're approaching the king and the two of them are kind of like, so they're walking, and the king and queen are walking to meet them, and they have this the king and queen are talking to each other, Shrek and Fiona are talking to each other, the women are trying to assure that it'll be fine, the men, Shrek and the king, are both like, this is not what's supposed to be happening, and it, like, cuts back between them, and they finish the other group's sentences. It's hard to describe unless you've seen the movie, but it's just a great scene, like, and then they jump. The cuts become more and more frequent, so it's like paranoia. Great scene. Then you go to the dinner scene, another great scene, where they're having dinner together, and they just get, like, Shrek and the king are sitting on opposite ends of the table, as far away as they can, because they hate each other, and there's just the tension, like, builds, and they start, like, cracking food, and there's just food going over, and then Donkey shows up, and he, like, sticks his head in the bowl and just starts drinking it like an animal, and then they all start yelling their names at each other, Shrek, Fiona, Donkey, and then my favorite moment, for me, the thing I quote most in the entire Shrek franchise, the most quotable bit for me is when they're all, the king, Fiona, Shrek, the queen, they're all yelling at each other, and they're like, Harold, Fiona, Shrek, whatever the queen's name is, I don't know. And then Donkey just goes, Donkey! So funny. Comedy gold. Comedy gold. Shrek 2 is the gold standard of Shrek films. The gold Shrektard. I'm never going to say that again, that sounded really dumb. And just it also has probably objectively the best villains in the series. You've got this excellent pair, the fairy godmother and her spoiled son, Prince Charming, who we decided when we were watching the movie, wait, what is Prince Charming's first name? Let's just say my headcanon theory is that she named her son Prince Charming. So, because she was grooming him to be a prince. And so we all just kind of agreed on that. And that adds a lot to, well, it doesn't add that much to that anyway. But those are also great characters because they're both, like, typical, the movie brilliantly continues the fairy tale subversion of the first movie, but I'd argue it does way more interesting with it beyond main character ogre and not prince. Like, it's the perfect sequel. It takes what the first movie did, fairy tale subversion in a standard fairy tale love story with a subversive twist, and, like, continues that story. What happens after Happily Ever After? How does this couple deal with, you know, like, this surprise marriage and approval from parents? It's very, like, adult issues. I think there's a lot in Shrek 2 for adults to appreciate. Like, just in terms of the way that, like, they deal with their marriage. We noticed when we were watching all four films that every film has a scene in which Shrek and Fiona fight about Shrek, and it essentially ends in either Shrek being like, I'm an ogre, I'm allowed to be mean, or somebody else being like, you're an ogre, and him being like, I know, and then the fight ends. And, like, I was kind of saying that as a criticism when I watched all four films, because every single one has a scene like that. But somehow, like, none of those scenes feel like derivative, really. They all feel like real arguments, and they don't feel like they're damaging the marriage of the two characters as a whole. I feel like it, I mean, I don't know, I'm not married, I don't know crap about marriage, but it feels like a surprisingly realistic portrayal of marriage, considering it's about two ogres. But anyway, back to the villains. The movie opens with Prince Charming, which is great. Like, he's narrating his own version of the princess rescue story, and then he shows up, and it's the wolf in the bed, and he's like, Fiona, she's on her honeymoon. So then that's like, then it cuts to the honeymoon. So everything in that first section is great. Almost everything in this movie is great. Shrek 2 is the only one of these that I had watched recently before this marathon. And oh man, having it in the whole context of the movies, it makes it even better. So you have the fairy godmother who's like this. So she fills the fairy godmother role, but she's actually like this sort of scheming, hyper-capitalist critique character. And normally I don't jump to like, oh, this movie's a critique of capitalism, but literally when Shrek shows up to the fairy godmother's factory, because she's advertised as living in this little cottage, and then behind the cottage is this giant factory. There's so many great visual gags like that. He literally goes in and like gets past the front desk guy by saying he's from the union and he's gonna help him out. So it's like very like she's clearly this like evil hyper-capitalist like deal-making scheming character, and then her son, who's not even really a prince at all, is like being set up to wed Fiona. I feel like it's implied that the fairy godmother is the one who put the curse on Fiona in the first place, but I don't know if the movie ever spells that out. How does this box describe her? A potion brewing fairy godmother, the pompous Prince Charming. They're such a good duo. Like the first scene where she shows up and she sings the song to Fiona is great, because it's just like this claustrophobic, and then of course the scene where she's like ragging on Harold in the carriage with her son and the two guards next to the, like, she's a thug. She's a mob boss basically. And she's just a great character, great villain. And then the Prince Charming is like, he works best as a pairing to her. The third movie tries to have him by himself, and like, I don't hate Prince Charming as a villain by himself, but he's definitely not imposing or threatening in any way. And then, you know, they go to the fast food place. And then there's the Starbucks gag towards the end of the movie. The giant Gingy knocks over a Starbucks, and then all the people in the Starbucks run across the street to the other Starbucks, except it's called like Farbucks, I think. Great gag. Oh, there's so many good. I love Shrek 2. I think my sandwiches are here. But I'm going to keep talking about Shrek 2. Hold on. I'll be out there in a minute.
Okay.
Don't come in here. Shrek sandwich. Dog barking. I don't want to have to edit this, so I just did that. Shrek, and then Puss in Boots is great. I feel like Puss in Boots' introduction is a little weird, because, like, the king goes to the tavern, and he's like, I need someone to kill Shrek, which seems a little extreme for him, but when you have the context of the full scope of the story, which is that, like, the king is actually the frog prince from another fairy tale, and the fairy godmother turned him into a human so he could be with the queen, and so that's what's at stake for him. Which, as a kid, I don't think I was even really aware that was, like... I mean, I knew that he turned into a frog at the end, but I don't think I was aware that he was always a frog, and that's what was at stake for him, and why the fairy godmother could threaten him and bully him into, like, sending a hitman to kill Shrek. Just like, as a kid, I don't think I realized that the person the king went and talked to in the tavern was Puss in Boots. I was like, that part of the movie was like a zone-out section for me. And I still think that part of the movie is just kind of the most, like, it kind of drags. That's the only part of the movie, a little bit in the middle there, where I would say it drags. It's weird how Puss in Boots gets introduced as an assassin, and then within 5 minutes, he's like just as much of a member of the squad as Donkey. I mean, there's a bit of animosity between him and Donkey that is kind of fun, but it is kind of weird. So that's like the one part of the movie where I'd say things are a little shaky, but then they go to the fairy godmother's factory and things really start to pick up again, because it's like there's all these like dudes in trench coats, and then they come into her room and she's brewing some crazy potion and it's very evil mastermind-ish, and then she sees them and she's like, fairy tale, no ogres, no ogres, and she just like shits on him, and then he tears apart the factory and drinks the potion, and then we have the best, not at all cursed, human Shrek. Human Shrek is a... Google, please load so I can pull up an image of human Shrek. We have the highlight of the movie, definitely, not the cursed part. Shrek is a... Oh god, oh god. Oh no, what is this? Oh, hold on. Hold on. The page is being slow. Hold on. That is not what human Shrek looks like in the film, but I just found myself a new cursed image. Although, to be honest, I gotta be honest, like, I feel like human Shrek is inherently cursed looking. He's pretty cursed looking. Like, they play him up as handsome, but he's pretty weird looking. So then you have Donkey as a stallion. Human Shrek exists. They go to find Fiona, and then this part of the movie doesn't make a lot of sense, but you kind of allow it, because at this point you're just on for the ride. Fairy Godmother locks human Shrek in a room, and she's like, you don't need to be with Fiona. You're not good enough to be with Fiona. And I think she kind of convinces him for a second. I don't know. This is another part of the movie that's a little unclear. Basically, she's having Charming pose as human Shrek to match up with human Fiona. I will say Fiona doesn't really buy it. Like, you know, if Shrek was actually to encounter her at any point, she'd be like, oh yeah, that's Shrek. Not this buffoon man over here. Prince Charming, big... Harry, oh my god, Logan Paul. Far away. I feel like I can do the Prince Charming voice pretty well, but that is not relevant. So then there's like, and then you have from there the third act jumps in, and that third act, I love the third act, because that's where you throw in the funny side characters. They're all chilling at Shrek's house, and they're like, okay, they're just like watching TV, and then they turn on some like cop show, the fairy tale equivalent of this like cop show, and then it's like the knights in Far Far Away are arresting human Shrek and Donkey, and they're like yelling, I'm Shrek, and Gingy's like, rewind the tape, and then they rewind it, and they hear, I'm Shrek, and they're all just like, oh. Yes, I am going to explain the whole movie, because I love Shrek 2 so much. Where was I? Yes, and then they go to the Muffin Man. It's alive! And they make a giant Gingy. And then you have the climax, the highlight of the movie, the glorious section we all know, the I Need a Hero section at the end. I need a hero... where it's the fairy godmother singing. Something I like about this franchise, a lot of the songs in the movies are sung in universe. Like, that's just a fun, like, detail. There's a surprising number of the songs in the Shrek movies are sung in universe by characters. The I Need a Hero scene is the best example of that. They're storming the castle, you know it, we all know it. Big Gingy shows up, the gumdrop, not the gumdrop button! Big Gingy falls into the ocean. On the cannons! Be good, he says as he sinks into the ocean. Top 10 anime death scenes. The Shrek and Prince and Puss and Donkey and whoever I'm talking about bust into the castle. They stop the ball. Fiona's saved. Fairy Godmother gets zapped. Everything ends great. And then there's the Far Far Away Idol bonus feature where human Simon Cowell shows up as a canon in the Shrekverse, and everybody sings songs, and it's great. Everything about Shrek 2 is great. There's little to nothing wrong with Shrek 2. All the characters are great. The arc that carries over from the first film, seeing like what happens, how they deal with disapproving parents, essentially. Disapproving parents of a marriage is an oddly realistic take for everything else being so stylized. And it's like this weird, like, Far, Far Away as a setting and the way it's established in Shrek 2 allows the series to continue and parody both fairy tale stories and pop culture within the same, like, setting. And that's the strength of Far, Far Away and the world building of the Shrekverse that comes from Shrek 2 and is just part of why Shrek 2 is just the best written movie. It doesn't feel like they made a sequel just because it felt like this was the natural evolution of the Shrek story. Like, okay, we find out who was supposed to rescue her. We find out what her parents think. We find out who probably placed the curse on her to begin with. Just incredible. And then we have everybody's favorite, Shrek the Third. When his frog-in-law suddenly croaks, already off to a great start, Shrek embarks on another whirlwind adventure with Donkey and Puss in Boots to find the rightful heir to the throne. I mean, what can I say? This is clearly the worst one. When we were watching the 4 movies together, I strongly considered fast-forwarding through Shrek the Third or just skipping it entirely, but we got to a certain point where it's just like, no, we gotta power through it. But I do feel like having to sit through all of Shrek the Third damaged my friends' opinions of Shrek Forever After, the 4th film. And I think it also damaged the critical reception of Shrek Forever After. Because Shrek the Third was just so clearly like, while Shrek the 2 was an inspired, like, sequel and continuation of the first one's themes and ideas, of kind of like, the first one is Shrek learning how to love. The second one is Shrek learning how to, like, carry himself in this social situation and be a good husband. Shrek the Third. What does Shrek learn in Shrek the Third? Who grows in Shrek the Third? The only legitimately, the only notable thing that happens in Shrek the Third that matters for the next movie is that Shrek has children. That's it. That's all. The King Arthur stuff is completely pointless. The idea of it is that he's supposed to learn how to be a father, but it doesn't really, like, they don't get that message across very well, at all. It's just kind of, there's 2 stories. I actually prefer I enjoy the story where Prince Charming comes in and tries to take over the kingdom. I like how the movie opens with Prince Charming again, but he's performing in a dinner theater doing like a shitty self-insert play where he kills Shrek, and everybody starts roasting him for it. Gingy's there, and of course he delivers all the great roast. I love Gingy. And Pinocchio. I'm wearing ladies' underwear. Oh, I forgot. Best part of Shrek 2, not the I Need a Hero scene, the breakout scene where he comes down Matrix style and they need him to lie. And they get a lot of mileage out of the Pinocchio lying thing. I think easily the funniest joke in Shrek the Third, and the scene I would rewatch over and over again as a kid, is where Prince Charming crashes Fiona's baby shower. And all the princesses have left, and it's just the goofy side characters sitting around a table having tea. And Prince Charming's, like, interrogating them, like, where did the princesses go? Pinocchio can't say that he doesn't know where they are, or that he doesn't know where they are, because then he'd be lying and his nose would grow. So he just sits there trying to, like, confusingly word the truth. He's like, I might not know where she might be, and I might be where she could be, or possibly, but... And the prince is just like, what are you saying? And then eventually one of the other side characters just is like, shut up, we know where they are. And that was like the one bit in the movie where I was genuinely laughing. That scene is so funny. And Gingy also has this moment where he has this like life flashback before his eyes, which I'm now realizing is actually kind of dark. The flashback implies that he once had a wife, and then that he was thrown in prison by Farquaad, and probably that his wife was eaten. Like, there is a dark Gingy side movie that needs to be made. It needs to be made. I will make it. Someday. But anyway, like, I enjoy that plot, and I enjoy how Charming is in this dinner theater, and then when he takes over the kingdom, he still wants to put on this dinner theater show, but as a full play. I enjoy just how, like, terrible of a villain he is. How, like, unintimidating he is. I think that plotline works a lot for comedic value. The Arthur plotline, on the other hand, is just boring. And it doesn't help that Justin Timberlake plays Arthur. This was during that era where movie studios were really trying to make Justin Timberlake in animated films a thing, which sucks because he's not a good actor. All of Arthur's lines are so flat, and all the stuff where they visit, like, Arthur's school or whatever, it's really, like, surface-level parody humor. Whereas I feel like Shrek 2 and the first Shrek, as much as I'm on that movie, both have really good, clever parody humor. Shrek the Third's is very surface-level. Even as a kid, I didn't really like the Arthur subplot, but this time, I felt like I wanted to fast forward it, and honestly, I probably should have for the greater enjoyment of the series as a whole for my friends. I was able to sit through all 4 movies, no problem, but when we got to the 4th one, my friends were like, oh, there's another one? Thankfully, the 4th one is good, and I'm going to move on to that one now, because the 3rd one sucks, and it's also not canon. The 3rd one has a scene where Prince Charming's rallying up all the villains, and he points out Rumpelstiltskin, and it is not the Rumpelstiltskin in the 4th one. Shrek the Third is, like, half canon. In my mind, there are 2 timelines of Shrek. The one... I feel like Shrek Forever After is actually a really interesting movie. Because it starts out with Shrek in this mundane, almost suburban life that feels like it's carrying... Sorry, video cut off. Shrek Forever After. Longing for the days when he was a real ogre, quote-unquote, Shrek signs a deal with Rumpelstiltskin to get his roar back. Do the roar! But turns his world upside down in the process. So yeah, basically, Shrek Forever After is maybe the most interesting of the Shrek movies. Because you have these 3 movies, the first 2 are inspired, the 3rd one was clearly just made because, money. There's not much inspiration behind its story. And then you have the 4th one, which takes things in a really different direction. The movie starts out, like I said, in this sort of suburban life. It almost seems like it's carrying over the annoyingness of all the characters in Shrek 3, because Shrek the Third kind of just, like, dumbed down all the characters. Made the side characters even, like, peak stupid, made Donkey a little dumber, made everybody just a little more, like, kooky. And then Shrek Forever After starts out almost at the peak of that. He's at his kid's birthday party, everybody's being dumb, the pigs ate the cake, this little kid's asking him to go, do the roar, telling him to do the roar, which is like the one Shrek meme that comes from the 4th movie, I feel like, is the do the roar thing. And then eventually, he blows up and he roars. And I think it's telling that the roar is actually... As much as do the roar is a meme, the roar is actually like an important... I feel like it's an important moment for the plot of the movie and for the series as a whole. It's the moment where things kind of like... The bad of Shrek the Third builds up. When I watched it with my friends, we were joking that the roar is the split of the timeline between the non-canon Shrek the Third and Shrek Forever After, which is just like a goofy meme theory. But it speaks to something that I think the roar scene, the do the roar scene, thematically is like a bridge connection, it's that connecting point where it's like, here's where you make a choice. Here's where Shrek has to make a choice. And in the original, the original timeline of the movie, he makes the choice to blow up at his wife again, with the ogre argument, which by this point, the ogrement, I'm an ogre, I want to be an ogre, is tired. He knows it's tired, she knows it's tired, but at the same time, you relate to his desire to be an ogre. Then, Rumpelstiltskin enters the picture. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, Rumpelstiltskin may not be the best villain in the Shrek series, but he is the most fun. I enjoy watching Rumpelstiltskin the most out of any Shrek. There's something very entertaining about his, like, this tiny little gremlin man performance. Like, I mean, Lord Farquaad has the tiny thing going on, too. That's actually something funny that you notice about all 4 Shrek films. The only villain in any Shrek film that could even slightly put up a fight against Shrek is the fairy godmother, because she has magic. Prince Charming, Farquaad, Rumpelstiltskin all look positively, like, puny and weak compared to Shrek. And they all have to have their minions, and, like, they all have to, like, scheme around him, which is kind of a fun... It's a fun dynamic. And Rumple, more than anything, like, he's just this tiny little gremlin man. Ah! I love the, like, manic energy of his character. There's a great scene where he's like, Shrek and Fiona got away, everything's fine, and then he just pours water all over one of his... He gets a glass of water, and he's like, it's fine, who let Shrek get away? And he's, like, super passive-aggressive, and all the witches are, like, scared, because if he pours the water on them, they'll melt, and he's, like, threatening them with it, and then he just dumps it on somebody. Oh yeah, she, like, gives a suggestion, maybe hire a bounty hunter to get Shrek, and he's like, that's a terrible idea, and he pours the water on her, she melts and dies, he just freaking kills her. And then he's like, oh wait, that actually is a good idea. Like, that's funny. I love Rumpelstiltskin in this movie. He's such a good, just such a, like, obnoxious little pestering villain. I feel like he's Prince Charming. He has a lot of the best elements from other villains in the series, just kind of combining into this. Who plays him? Because I feel like whoever plays him is also, like, his voice, the voice acting on him is just great. I love the performance. It's kind of Martin Short-ish. I don't think that's who played him, but I'm curious. But yeah, I was shocked. Like, Shrek Forever After is probably the film of the four that I've seen the least. I'm searching this while also trying to... Who played Rumpelstiltskin in Shrek? Yes. Shrek Forever After is probably the film I've seen the least. Walt Dorn. I've never heard of him in anything else. But, like, look at this image. Look at this chaotic energy. Like, he's just... He does look like Shane Dawson. There's an image down here. No, we're getting distracted by images again. Shrek Forever After. So, and I love that it's like, it adds even more lore. Like, the movie opens with the king and the queen going to meet Rumpelstiltskin to sign a deal. Their daughter has been in the tower for years. They have no knowledge of when she's going to get back. They're about to sign this deal with Rumple to get their daughter back in exchange for the kingdom. Like, he's not swindling them. He's not, like, bending the truth about what the deal is. He straight up is like, give me your kingdom. And they're like, should we do it? We haven't seen our daughter in ages. And then a guard burst in and is like, she's been saved by Shrek. So then you have a setup from there. You have the setup for the villain. That's actually something interesting about the Shrek movies. The first one opens with Shrek narrating. Then the second one opens with Charming narrating, and the fourth one opens with Rumple narrating, and the third one opens with Charming's dinner theater. The third one is the only one to not open with a storybook parody opening. Every movie, the first one... Another reason the third one's not canon. You know what? We'll go into that later. In the fourth one, it's Rumple, and he's flipping through the book, and he's getting more and more pissed that Shrek just, like, ruined everything for him. And by the end, he's tearing stuff out of the book, and then he's in a library, and Pinocchio comes up and is like, sir, you're gonna have to pay for that. Which, great. There's so many funny bits in these movies. And Rumple... It's hard to describe what makes him work as a villain, but he's just, like, obnoxious and, like, conniving. I love his energy. There's another scene where he offers bribes to... You know what? Never mind. I'm not going to talk about that scene. I don't want to go into every single scene, but he's also, like, he's smart. He's not a dumb, blithering idiot. He's, like, genuine... There are moments where he's genuinely, like, not scary, but just, like... What's the word I'm looking for? There's the scene where, okay, so Shrek turns himself in to get the deal of a lifetime, blah, 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 plot stuff, and Rumple turns to him, and in exchange, Shrek gets all the ogres freed in exchange for turning himself in. And then he sees Fiona still chained up, and he's like, why is Fiona still here? And Rumple's like, but Fiona isn't all ogre, is she? And he turns around with this, like, evil smirk, and it's maybe the most, like... He's maybe the most conniving, menacing... I don't know if menacing is the right word, but just, like... evil villain in the whole... He's just so relentlessly like, me. It's great. I love... He's my favorite villain in the series. Fairy Godmother's probably, like, the best one, objectively, but I love Rumple. But the rest of the movie, there is more movie besides just Rumple, and the rest of the movie is also good. So Rumple tricks Shrek into signing away an insignificant day when you were a wee little kid, a day you don't even remember. And then, of course, that day is the day Shrek is born. So he goes back in time, or no, he doesn't go back in time. He essentially creates an alternate universe, and Shrek just thinks, oh, it's just a day for me to be an ogre again and scare people. And, oh my god, I forgot the Shrek Forever After tagline was, it ain't ogre till it's ogre. They were doing these ogre puns before it was a big meme. Anyway, so it essentially creates this dystopian alternate universe in which the king and the queen signed the deal. They got poofed away by it. Rumple rules the kingdom with an iron fist. Far, Far Away is in ruins. Shrek's swamp is in ruins. Donkey is, like, enslaved. But the most interesting character change in this alternate universe is seeing Fiona, who is now this, like, she's the leader of this ogre resistance. She's like an ogre warrior. It's like this cool, really cool role reversal of the first movie, how she was a human and she was scared to, like, be out in the dark and show her ogre side. No. After years of being stuck in the palace with no one rescuing her, because I guess Rumple's deal didn't free her like he said it would, she left the tower herself. She fought her way out herself, and she joined this ogre resistance, and so she hides herself during the day, so none of them know she's a human princess. And it's like, I don't think you ever see her in human form in this movie. Like, every scene with her in it takes place in the dark of night. A lot of this, Shrek Forever After is easily the darkest film in the franchise, both literally, visually, and just tonally. Like, it's literally, they put Shrek in this dystopian hellscape. And I'm a sucker for, like, alternate universe stories. That's part of why I like Shrek Forever After so much, and even did when I saw it younger. I was saying this earlier. Shrek Forever After is the one I've seen probably the least of any of these, but it's also, like, I'm pretty sure I saw it in theaters, and I really liked it when I saw it, but I just didn't watch it that much afterward. Because it's much less humor-focused than the second and third one, or even the first one. The scenes with Rumple are funny, and he's like both... He's the one villain in the series that I would say is both funny and genuinely threatening. None of the... Like, Farquaad and Charming are jokes, and Fairy Godmother is threatening, but she's not funny. Rumple is both comedic and threatening. And that's why Rumpelstiltskin is the best villain in the Shrek franchise. Thank you, that's the review. No, there's always more to dive into with these movies, because the thematic elements are great, because it essentially creates this story where Shrek has to fall in love with Fiona all over again. But this time, she's a warrior. She's independent. And they set this up in other movies really nicely. I didn't realize it until I was watching them all together, but like every movie has like a badass fighting Fiona moment. So it makes sense that, you know, if nobody ever rescued her, she left the tower and became this epic ogre warrior leader person. And so he has to kind of like, first he has to convince her that he really loves her and what he's saying is true, and then he has to convince her to love him, which is another great expectation subversion. About 2/3 of the way through the movie, Shrek just kisses Fiona, kind of just sporadically, to like break the curse, because that's how the curse is broken, and he has to do it within a day. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work because she doesn't love him yet, which is a thing that other movies have done, but when I saw this movie for the first time, it was certainly not a thing I'd seen been done before. And so there's this sort of like, there's this despair to it. It's bold. The movie is bold. It is boldly dark. Like, they could have just made some dumb adventure where Shrek and Donkey and Puss in Boots go on a fun little adventure, and Shrek babies, and he's learning how to take care of the babies. But instead they decided to go this bold other direction and just introduce this super cool alternate universe story that essentially forces Shrek to... I feel like Shrek and Fiona's marriage at the beginning of the movie is reaching that point of stagnation where they might not get along anymore and eventually divorce, just like start fighting, and then this sort of, I guess, kind of an It's a Wonderful Life scenario jumps in and like forces Shrek to learn how to fall in love again. And I'd argue it's the emotional conclusion of this movie in conjunction with the other two. I'm not going to include Shrek the Third because it adds nothing thematically. The other two movies is such a satisfying resolution. They play the Hallelujah at the end. Shrek is dying. He's finally done something genuinely selfless. I feel like Shrek 1 and Shrek 2 are ultimately about him. Shrek 1 is him falling in love, learning how to love, and love himself and love Fiona. Shrek 2 is him learning how to sort of function in society. Shrek the Third is supposed to be him learning how to be a parent, but it's kind of butchered. Shrek Forever After is Shrek learning to actually be selfless. Because he was in this marriage for Fiona. And I mean, he's been selfless to an extent for Fiona, but the kind of selfless that's required to devote yourself to being a father and to going through that parent routine is something that Shrek has to learn. And that's what he learns in this movie through this kind of alternate universe. So Rumple puts out a bounty for him midway through the movie. The bounty hunter fails. The bounty hunter captures all the ogres except Shrek. In a great sequence, the bounty hunter is the Pied Piper, and he, hypnotizes people and forces them to dance, which is just super fun. This movie is not devoid of fun moments. It's not all bleak and dour. But they managed to catch all the ogres except Shrek and Fiona, the two that Rumple is concerned about catching. So he offers a deal. The deal of a lifetime for anyone in the kingdom. If they can turn in Shrek, they get anything they want. So Shrek goes to the castle, and he turns himself in, so he gets the deal of the lifetime. But he's not doing it to try to, get his life back, because he knows Rumple's not going to do that easily. What he asks for is for Rumple to free the ogres. He feels like he failed Fiona by sort of heightening the pursuit against... There is a full-on war in this movie, too, which is great. Ogres versus witches and Rumple's minions. And this war's been going on for years, it's implied. And so he turns himself in to free the other ogres. Not to, win Fiona's approval, but just to save Fiona from Rumple. He's willing to die and accept that he's failed. This is after he tries to kiss her and it doesn't work. He's willing to just, turn himself in to save her and the other people. And for the first time, Shrek commits a truly selfless act that isn't at all motivated by trying to repair his relationship or appeal to other people. It's completely and utterly selfless. And then, I'll be honest, I'm kind of forgetting what happens between that and the end of the movie. They win. I know they win. They, Shrek and Fiona break... Oh, yeah, all the ogres come in and the new shit... They pull a Trojan horse and come in and There's a lot of cool action scenes in this movie, too. There's scenes where Shrek is riding around on a broomstick. There's so much to love about Shrek Forever After that I feel like people didn't give it much of a chance because Shrek the Third was so creatively bankrupt that I think a lot of people either did see Shrek Forever After because they assumed it was going to be the same, or went into it not wanting to like it because the fact that they were making a fourth Shrek film at all irritated them, which I totally get that. There did not need to be 4 Shrek films, and there does not need to be a Shrek 5, and I'm not all that excited for Shrek 5. Let Shrek stay in the first 2 decades of the 2000s. I feel like the Shrek franchise is an excellent microcosms of the 2000s and early 2010s era of animation. The Shrek series had such an impact on, for a while, after Shrek came out, all the animation studios were trying to be like Shrek. Disney was struggling because their brand wasn't working, and stuff like Shrek was selling instead. Like, Shrek, even today, I'd argue Shrek has a huge, there's no anything current DreamWorks, or even anything like Minions or Despicable Me, without Shrek, without the Shrek franchise. And, together, Shrek 1, Shrek 2, and Shrek Forever After actually tell this great story of, you know, this ogre. He learns to love himself, he learns to love himself and Shrek 2, he learns to love others, he learns to love family, he learns to be a family, and Shrek Forever After, he learns to be selfless, in a way that he definitely isn't at the start of the movie, and really isn't in any of the other movies. I mean, the whole reason he goes and gets Arthur is that he's selfish and he wants Arthur to be the king and not him. Granted, I don't think anyone thinks King Shrek is a good idea, but still. He's just very selfish throughout the first 3 movies, and even the beginning of the 4th movie. And then he says the line, as he's about to die, because sunrise is happening, and he's supposed to disappear because he was technically never born in this universe. They've taken down Farquaad, the ogres are free, he's completed his mission, and he says the wonderful line. He says, the best part of today is that I got to fall in love with you all over again, to Fiona. What a beautiful line. There's many other videos on the YouTube space talking about the Shrek franchise. Shafarilla's Productions is one channel that has videos on like every Shrek movie, and his review has that line featured prominently as a big and yeah, a lot of this, I'm kind of echoing his sentiments in some of these situations, but now I've actually seen all the movies to back up these sentiments, and I would say that after seeing that moment, and seeing Shrek Forever After, like, Shrek cries in the movie. This is the only one Shrek cries in. This is the most emotional Shrek film, the most mature Shrek film. It's not the funniest one, but it's not trying to be. It's trying to do something really bold and different. And I feel like people don't give Shrek Forever After enough credit, because to really be invested in its story, because the story takes itself seriously. I think that's the big thing. The story in Shrek Forever After takes itself more seriously than any of the other Shrek films do. And so if you're not completely invested into the Shrek world and willing to take it seriously, Shrek Forever After is not going to hit. But if you, are fully invested, and like I am, and willing to treat these Shrek movies as the films, as the cinematic wonders they are, you will enjoy Shrek Forever After. And personally, I can say this with conviction now, having watched all 4 of them, I prefer Shrek Forever After to the original Shrek. It's the better movie. It's more the world is more interesting. The world is more interesting. It builds on all the other movies. I just said the world is more interesting twice. But it builds on all the other movies, and then, of course, the curse is broken, and he goes right back to the roar. The roar is the moment, the big snap moment where he can decide to either... And then he makes a better decision, and he becomes Happy Family Shrek. The only criticisms I could give about Shrek Forever After is I don't really like what they did with Puss in Boots. I don't know why they made him Fiona's fat pet cat. That was kind of weird. And some of the characters like Donkey, Gingy, Pinocchio get a little sidelined because the story is so focused on this. Is Shrek and Fiona falling in love in a way that feels way more interesting and way less kind of vanilla fairy tale than the first Shrek. Actually, the first Shrek, the way they fall in love is not so much vanilla fairy tale, it's more vanilla rom-com. Like, the first film is a rom-com. The second film is like a... I don't know, the second film is in a league of its own. But the fourth film is like an It's a Wonderful Life type drama with Shrek, which by all means probably shouldn't work as well as it does, but it's such a satisfying, emotional... Like, it was clearly meant to be... This is another thing I applaud them for. They clearly made it to be the last film in the franchise. It provides an emotional conclusion to Shrek's arc. He learns to be selfless. He gives himself up, and of course he's saved in the end. But you get the sense that even if he wasn't saved, he still did what was right. He did what was good. He fully evolves from this ogre that possibly eats people in the first movie to a genuinely great person. Honestly, it's kind of beautiful to watch. Just maybe skip through Shrek the Third, because it has no creative substance. So finally I'll rank them. Shrek 2 is number 1, obviously. Shrek 2 is just so great. Like, Shrek Forever After may be the most emotionally affecting movie, but Shrek 2 is the best overall package. Best comedy, best plot, best world building, all that stuff. Best characters. Shrek Forever After is number 2. I will stand by that. That, like, it has more interesting things going on than the first movie. The first movie's a 3rd place. No minor feat. All of these movies are great. Except, we have the worst movie in the franchise. Shrek the Third. It just doesn't work in the same way the others do. It's clearly, like, creatively bankrupt compared to the others. And I fear Shrek 5 will be the same way. I'm not sure if it's Shrek 5 or if it's more of a reboot. I don't know what the deal is with it, but as we move into the 2020s and I move to university literally 2 days from now, that's why it took so long to get this out, because I've just been busy trying to get ready to leave, and so I didn't record it. I had the 3 Kloss, Star Wars, and this. I wanted to record them all in the same day and get them done, and then I definitely didn't do that. But I'm getting them all done now, and that's what's important to me. As my life, anyway, as we move into the 2020s and I move out of my parents' house and start, living my adult life, I've really enjoyed looking back at the Shrek quadrilogy, the Shrek 4 movie collection, analyzing each movie and just sort of reminiscing on, frankly, an animation hallmark of the 2000s, and to an extent the 2010s too. Shrek is a very special franchise to me, I think. I think I've kind of, like, it was never my favorite movies as a kid, but, like, of all the stuff I watched, it's the stuff that, it holds up the best. What's interesting is the Shrek franchise introduced a lot of things that later animated movies do worse, like the ending a movie with all the characters singing along and dancing to a modern pop song cliche, or the pop culture reference filled animated movie thing. Shrek is a blueprint for all of that, for a whole different style of animated movie. Completely different from the Disney formula, and frankly, kind of what's been the dominant style of animated movies since for the 21st century. A true 21st century animated masterpiece. Shrek. The Shrek franchise is worth watching, except the 3rd one. Skip the 3rd one. Watch the others, especially Shrek Forever After. Shrek Forever After doesn't get enough credit, and it's really good. It's just as good as the others. Watch it. Watch these movies, and have a Merry New Year's. Get schlecht! I'm not even gonna bother to record this horizontally because my phone is dumb. But I tried to edit together the 2 clips for the Shrek review, and I was trying to do it on my phone, and then my phone didn't have enough space to save the edits, so I tried to free up space, and Google Photos is bad and does that thing where it just deletes whatever you want it to when you try to whatever it wants to when you try to free up space, so you don't actually delete what you wanted to delete. So then it deleted both Shrek videos from my phone. They were still on my Google Photos account. But then I tried to re-download them to my phone so I can put the edit together, and I re-downloaded one, and I thought it was re-downloaded, so I deleted the original file, apparently from my Google Photos permanently, and then when I re-downloaded it to my phone, the download didn't work, so now I have a broken 30-minute video file on my phone of the first half of the Shrek video, and the other half of the Shrek video is, and that half of the Shrek video is gone. The one that, I have a broken half of the Shrek video on my phone, and then another half that is on here, but the first half is gone. It's not on Google Photos anymore. So I have half of a Shrek series review, half of a RetroShrektive. I had a pun title for it too. I hate everything. I hate YouTube. And I've been doing so much stuff in my new dorm room with college that I don't have the patience to record another Shrek review. I don't want to do this anymore. This is lame. Goodbye. Goodbye, Shrek. I got Shreked. Ash, I am dumb. But I'm gonna keep these clips in as an explanation of why it took me so long to upload this, because I recorded it on the 6th and it's now the 9th and I still need to edit it, and so it's probably not gonna be uploaded till the 10th. Goodbye.